Bringing you blasphemy in 2023.
That's good. That's good.
That was easy one, honestly. It was
Yeah.
kind of low hanging fruit in my opinion, but I just try to come up with stuff that make you giggle at this point. Like that's my goal. So it's like, what ridiculous thing can I say? It's not something I could use all the time, you know. In a year, it'll probably be outdated, but
Yeah, in a year for sure. This one is. But it's easy to change. This is a
That's
version
true.
that you use. All right, guys, make sure you like the video. Don't forget, like right now, okay? We're not gonna get started until you like the video. Okay, good. All right, let's go. We're gonna be answering questions, mostly Patreon questions. But every time if we get a super chat, we'll pause and we will address the super chat before we go back to Patreon questions. So feel free to answer the super chats as well. People are saying hi, hello, everyone. Woohoo! Yeah, let's do so. Yeah, okay, great. Let's do this. Okay, yeah. So send us your questions in super chats if you can. But we have already 6 Patreon questions, which we're gonna answer. If you want to be a patron and send us your questions for next week ahead of time, and the link to our Patreon is in the description. And also, once we're done with answering the Patreon questions and the super chats, we will post a link to our YouTube members in the channel's Atheist Republic YouTube channel's community tab. And if you're a member, you could come up and talk to us live on air. And yeah, that's going to be about it. But let's get to the questions. Here's the first one. Okay. What do you guys think of the concept of gaslighting? Why do you think groups of people do it? Why do you think groups of people do it? Individuals?
Yeah, that doesn't
Two
make
individuals?
sense. Yeah, that's what I'm guessing. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Does standing out from a crowd in any way qualify someone as a potential victim of gaslighting? I don't think that's the definition of gaslighting.
Yeah, when I first read this, I was a little bit confused, but from my understanding, the term gaslighting comes from like an early 1900s play and story, actually, that is specifically about a husband who convinces his wife that she is going crazy and that the things that he has done to her are not real because she is actually losing her mind. And that is actually what the term refers to. It is gaslighting is not just saying to somebody, no, that's not how I remember something happening, right? Gaslighting is specifically telling somebody like, hey, yesterday you took a bath, right? At some point in the day, right? Well, no, that didn't actually happen. And the only reason that you think it's happening is because you're demented, like you're going through the first stages of, dementia or something. So, the term is used a lot today, and it's not often used in the correct way, which, that's what happens. But yeah, from my understanding, gaslighting is specifically trying to convince somebody that they are going through some sort of mental psychosis so as to continue to, emotionally abuse or mentally abuse them in some way. So
Yeah,
I don't know.
Or just like portraying things in a way that is very different from actual reality,
purposefully and with malicious intent.
Yes, and then if you question like any slight suggestions of that not being true is evidence that there's something wrong with you, or like,
right. And not being and going so, to the point of not being, willing to accept, like if somebody pulls out a picture, right, or if somebody, shows the video footage or whatever. But yeah, I think it is definitely something that occurs, right, which is why the story was originally written and why it was adapted into a play and so on and so forth. I don't think like standing out from the crowd has anything necessarily. I think anybody can be a potential victim of it, right? But yeah, I would say that, yeah, a lot of times when you hear people saying the term gaslighting today, I feel like it's not exactly being used correct. But even still, it is a very real thing. It is a very real thing. It does happen, and there are lots of people that are hurt by it. So,
all right, we just got a new question from D.
Ooh.
Let me actually bring up the article that she also attached to this question. Let me bring it up. Do you want to read the question while I bring up the article?
Yeah. So D says Pew Research just released findings of the 118th U.S. Congress, in which they reported that 88% are Christians compared to 63% of the general population. It isn't clear if California's incoming congressman is religious or not, but check this out and tell us your thoughts. Always appreciate D. D does a lot of stuff. Always has great stuff.
Yeah. Okay. So this is
got?
what?
Oh, righteous. I just with the headline. I don't even care where the rest of it goes. Like, awesome.
This is good.
That makes me happy.
The title says, "Why this congressman is using Superman comic for swearing in." That is beautiful. I love it.
So great. Yeah.
Okay. So what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so it is common practice in the United States for specifically public officials, public elected officials, to swear in on a Bible. This is common practice when it comes to a lot of administrative court type things, right? This is what we do. Technically, and the Supreme Court has ruled on this many times in the past in various ways, that it is not a requirement that one use the Bible specifically. One could use theoretically any book that the individual finds to be particularly meaningful and important for their that general quote unquote spiritual health, right? So we have had various elected officials in the past do things like, you know, the Tanakh or the Quran or, you know, all kinds of different things, right? This being a Superman comic, I don't think we've exactly had anything like that in the past, which I think is awesome. I think it's awesome because even if this individual is not an atheist or not, you know, is somebody of a religious faith, the fact that they're doing this, I think, helps to normalize being non-religious in this country, because as a non-religious person in this country, you have rights. You have rights. Separation of church and state is not something that is for specifically non-religious people. It's for everybody, because we all have that right to our personal faith, and we shouldn't have that. We shouldn't have another faith imposed on us by our government. So whether or not this person is atheist or not, I don't even care. I just think it's great because it helps to set that precedent and just make it more of a normal thing to not be a believer in a God, you know?
Yeah, it's just like, but what about the fact that 88% Christians and that doesn't in Congress doesn't represent the 63% of the
Now
population?
that is definitely an interesting piece in and of itself. So on that specifically, it's very, very strange how this is the case, but in the United States, it is almost a guarantee that if you don't profess a religious faith regularly, mostly Protestant Christian, but if you don't do that as a candidate, you pretty much are just not going to be elected. And that is fascinating. And I think that's one of the big reasons why we're seeing a lot of the problems that we have over the last couple of years with the rise of Christian nationalism and the kind of breaking down of church-state separation and the Supreme Court going against precedents and all that stuff. Go ahead.
I do think that the 63% is for everybody, but the congressmen are older, right?
Yes,
So,
that's part of
so
it.
if you, so maybe like it wouldn't be 63% if you only polled 8 people that had the same age as Congress.
You would probably be more in line. Correct. Totally agree with that.
So that means going forward, our
yeah,
Congress is going to also be like closer to 63% Christian, right?
hopefully,
which will solve the war. It will basically fix everything.
I mean, we are in a place right now in the United States where the average age of our elected officials, especially at a federal level, are going up to a number that is, you know, a bit higher, in my opinion, than seems reasonable. I don't think there's really any value in somebody that's been in, you know, the highest levels of government for 30 years, who's approaching their mid 70s. I don't see what the value is of keeping that particular individual. I don't see why we shouldn't advocate for somebody new who maybe trains with that person, maybe gains wisdom from that 30-year veteran. But we do live in a place right now in the United States where the vast majority of those people are on the older side. They are that, 60 plus crowd. And that, like you said, that general population is including so many of the under 25s today that are non-religious, which is great, honestly. But yeah, I think there is a bit of a culture that our elected officials need to have some religion in the United States, and hopefully in the next few cycles we can start to kind of wean that down, and just break that stuff down. But it, unfortunately, you just really can't be elected right now in the US as somebody. An open atheist being elected to something is practically unheard of right now, which again is just weird, but that's where it is.
All right, let's do this one. Patron question. In the attached video, it shows NYPD allowing Proud Boys to dodge fares, and an action that can get you $100 ticket. Do you think the NYPD or a portion of them has chosen to side with fascists? If so, how can this be? Oh my God, I have this. Ameliorated.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, got it.
How can this be fixed?
Yes. Why would anybody use ameliorated over fixed?
It's
Why?
Pretty. It's pretty. It has
Fix.
this.
We have like FIX compared to ameliorated. Like why? Why would you do that? Jesus Christ.
Oh, it's pretty. It's poetry words.
All right, sure. All right, here's the video. So the caption of this tweet says, wait, let me actually share it again because I don't think I shared audio the first time. There we go again. All right. The caption says, NYPD help Proud Boys commit fare evasion and then tell journalists to go back and pay for the fare. Everyone should see this video. Okay, let's watch the video.
Proud Boys don't have to pay for the fare. No, Proud Boys don't have to pay for the fare.
We're special, thank you.
You don't have to pay for the fare.
Appreciate it from your tax.
Proud Boys don't have to pay for the fare.
No, thank you.
That is insane. Proud Boys don't have to pay for the fare.
$3. I'm sorry. I just need you to go out.
Oh, I have to pay for the fare, but they don't.
Right.
Is that the situation you're saying?
That's correct.
Proud Boys.
Okay, I'm sure there's something else to this. This is like I'm sure. Like, well, I shouldn't always be sure, but I don't think this is insane. I think this person who's recording this is insane. I think the person who posted this with the caption is insane. Do you really think like what's happening here is that the NYPD is like, oh yeah, Proud Boys, we love them so much. Let's do them a solid by making them not pay the fare. Like, do you really think that's what's happening here? I'm pretty sure there's a context to this that makes this. I mean, even if it is bad, even if it's like, okay, they did an oopsie here, I don't think that what's happening is like, oh, we just love them so much, let's just like do them like a favor.
I would definitely say this video is something that should start an investigation, look into this, right? But I kind of agree in the sense I feel like once that occurs, we would find something fairly innocuous that's pretty easy to look. If you want to talk about the connection of police officers in various precincts in the United States to Proud Boys or far right, fascist militias, you could do it. It's not hard. Like that has been done. And there are are lots of other videos that show that connection much more clearly. But that being said, yeah, I think this is one of those videos that, this is the start of us looking into stuff. This shouldn't be the video that makes us go, oh yeah, case closed, right? This is the video that makes us go, okay, what? Yeah, look at that very first comment. Scroll up just a bit, Armin. Yeah, what is the larger context? Right. So, like, what is the larger context? And okay, and they were coming from harassing a drag story hour. Now, that's horrible. That's a horrible, disgusting thing. Completely disagree with that, with what they did. Is there a larger context in terms of them getting on this subway? So,
okay, so I don't trust Andy No's takes on things, okay? but let's see what they are saying. The context is okay. This is Timcast News. Okay, I don't trust this either. Timcast, I think it's Tim Pool. But anyways, let's see. They're saying when the Jackson Heights Drag Queen Story Hour protest concluded. Okay, there's a comma missing here. Is it just me or is a comma missing here?
Yeah.
Okay. Protesters attempted to disperse, but were menaced and pepper sprayed by Antifa, leading to an NYPD escort into the subway that the small mob was prevented from following them into.
Okay.
But
So
there's
if
the Antifa, yeah, okay.
so again, not taking this either at face value, right? Haven't taken
Right.
any of these tweets at face value. But if we're now saying, okay, there is this larger context that the police were escorting this group of individuals away, then yeah, they would go through the subway without paying. That would be the case, and that's practice that is done for lots of different groups. I'm not saying correctly and equally all the time, not in the slightest, but that type of police protection is something that we supposedly guarantee to people, right?
Yeah, like even if you had like I mean, they are fascist, but like even any fascistic group or any problematic group, if you start attacking them and the police is now required to move them, you know, escort them, they're not gonna wait and like pay for the fare. Like,
and this is one of the issues I think too, is because in a moment like this, you know, it almost, especially at like first glance, I think when people start to say things like this and look at the broader context and try to say, you know, hey, look, you know, even these guys deserve not to be brutalized and beaten in the streets to death, right?
It's the law.
That's
you know?
right, and we should
things-
should apply the law equally, even if the other side is
If you physically attack a group, the police is required to protect them. That's how things work. Okay.
Right.
Sorry, this is how the civilized world works. Okay.
Yeah, and again, hey, you know, say that again. I agree. This video makes me go, whoa, that's not good. And then,
but
I didn't buy.
I mean, I didn't buy it for a second.
Oh,
I don't know. Am I being? I'm not buying it for a second. That like, oh, what's happening? But look at all these serious people with like. Let me see. Look at.
Oh yeah, it gets people excited.
Okay, so 60,000 likes. Okay, so I don't know, around 60,000 people. Okay, at least. Watch this video. Like, oh yeah, that's what's happening. The NYPD were like, oh, let me, bad boys, we love those guys. But YouTube, that's not what we're saying. Okay,
not at all.
Okay,
do not agree with that.
We do not love those groups. Okay, we hate them. Okay, but this is what people are like. Oh yeah, Proud Boys, fantastic. Let's just give them privileges and walking around in New York City, like just like, oh yeah, no fair for you guys because you're like police. Look, what? Like, is this like what your take is? Like, how naive do you have to be? Do you think that this is the world you live in?
Yeah, and this is kind of like going back to something I had kind of touched on like last week, and you know, a point that I always like to bring up, which is, look, like you don't need to make up the bad stuff that the Proud Boys supports or that the Proud Boys does. You don't need to lie about the connections that policemen and women, police officers in the United States have with these far-right fascist groups. You don't have to lie about it. We have a lot of this information. They do bad things. They support bad people. They support bad policies. Like, we know this connection. Show the true connections, show the true things, because when we do hype something up that does have a larger context, that does have more of a nuanced understanding to it, we hurt our side. Like, no way, shape, or form here standing up for the fucking Proud Boys. In no way am I doing that. But I am saying, if what actually was going on was that the police were escorting them away after they were being, you know, physically attacked, well, that is what I want our police to do. I want our police to protect people. That is the law. I like that being followed and applied equally, even if I think you're a fascist piece of shit. Even if that's the case, you still deserve protection under the law, and you deserve your day in court like anybody else. And again, we don't have to lie about the shit that they like. We don't have to make stuff up. They have some horrible ideologies. We can just point those out and call them out for it. So
exactly.
But It did look like they were skipping it did look like they were skipping through the fair and without any,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. I mean, well, that's like I don't. Yeah. Let's go to this next question. YouTube age restricts many of the PRC riots, but allows GTA violence. Okay, because one of them is real, the other one is
right.
digital fake.
Yeah.
Would it be okay to use AI to render live footage into a cartoon so it can bypass YouTube censors, or would that cheapen the value of the protests? What about like you just go to GTA and try to recreate?
That's a worse idea.
Okay, we can't show this
God.
PRC riot. Let's just go to GTA.
You could probably do it easier in like Minecraft or Roblox or something.
Yeah.
I think that's like hip with the kids today. So, but that's such a. I love that. Like, Gaijin was like, "What if we do this? Or would that like cheapen it?" And then Armin's like, "Nah, screw it. Just like recreate it in a video game. Just like
Minecraft." Yeah. Imagine if we had like Minecraft version of the news, like for YouTube.
Oh, it'd be so much better. Like, way more people would watch it. Like, honestly.
Yeah, the government is shooting people and you're watching it, and there's like a Minecraft
like,
version
yeah.
of people are dying.
Oh my gosh.
Oh.
I don't know. Like, when I first looked at this, I thought, I was like, maybe it does kind of cheapen it, right? But do you remember there was this video a few years ago of this like, she had to have been like 13 or 14 on TikTok, and it starts out with her being like, I'm going to show you guys how to get like the best smoky eye look with your mascara. It's going to be awesome. And then the video starts and she just goes, so you just open the box and apply the mascara. And by the way, if you're not paying attention to the genocide that's occurring in China right now with the Uyghurs and stuff, like, it was amazing. And it's like, does that cheapen it? I don't think so. I think that gets the message out.
It doesn't cheapen it because people can actually it does the opposite,
right?
Because people are like, you're trying to do everything you can to get us this news. Like, we thank you for that. Like, there are barriers for the information, and
does
you're trying
taking that video footage and running it through a program that renders it in this animated cartoonish style, so that people can see what's actually occurring on the ground, right? I mean, wouldn't that also kind of do the same thing, right? It's this is a big deal that we're not allowed to see because our government censors this, and you have gone, what was
YouTube?
YouTube, yeah, sorry. What was that thing you guys talked about where there was the PORN, the Chinese, they were putting dates and times for like different protests in Hong Kong. I thought I remember y'all talking about that on the news like a while ago, like in the middle of like this PORN video, they would just put like, be at this place at this time to protest again. Like, I don't know, I value that. I mean, sure, it would distract me, but I think it's an important thing.
It distracts you from what exactly?
from really feeling the patriotism and
I thought it will distract you from from your orgasm. Like,
that too. I mean, that too.
Like, like, imagine you're like, man, I'm just trying to come here. What the hell?
Like, dang it, I missed it. What was the date again? They tell you it's like,
try to write it down. Like, ew, like, okay.
They tell you it's like 21 minutes in, and then you're like, you get bored, so you just really start enjoying the video, and they're like, oh crap, dang it, where'd it go? It's way off topic. But
how did we get to here?
It was my fault. Yeah, it was my fault. It's I figured start off on a good foot for the new year. So.
Oh my god, the image of somebody trying to write down the date of a protest with their hands being like cummy and everything at the same time. Just amazing.
Oh my gosh. Hey, by the way, like the video and subscribe to the channel.
Yes, please. Thank you. And yeah, that helps us grow. Also, we just and also use super chats to send us your questions right now, because we just got one, right? But thank you so much, David the Goliath, with the $5 super chat. saying, do you think it is possible UN can pass a resolution that Islam is false and instruct Muslim nations to not enslave their population? I think there's zero chance for that. I mean, technically, well, there's not zero chance for anything. There's as much chance for that as God being real. How about that?
Yeah,
Is that good?
yeah. Very, very low likelihood. I mean, technically, though, already the UN has a resolution about like slavery. So technically, the UN already has something that's like, hey, you're not supposed to do this. This is bad. But I don't think they would ever. I don't think they would ever pass a resolution on Islam being false. Like,
Yeah, it's not the UN's mandate to even.
yeah, they don't care.
Actually, well, no, actually, they do care. This would be against UN like it would be against UN's own charter of human rights.
I see what you're
UN
saying. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
UN itself has specific articles saying
That's a good point.
ensuring the practice. First of all, I wouldn't even support this.
It'd be
right.
Weird. Yeah.
Not only I don't think UN would do this. I would be if we lived in a parallel world that UN was doing this. I would like UN is a multi-governmental agency, right? And you shouldn't tell us what ideas are right and what ideas are wrong. Thank you very much. Mind your own business, right? So
do you realize? Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. Finish.
No, that's citizens' job to fight ideas. We don't want governments or international institutions to come and tell us like these ideas are illegal, right? But,
could you imagine how ridiculous of a title for an article that would be? Ex-Muslim activist, atheist activist Armin Navabi fights against UN resolution declaring Islam false. Like, what a weird sentence that would be. That would just be like, wait, what? What's going on now? Did he convert?
Yeah.
Is it?
No, but I would like I said that on the Persian show as well, because on the Persian show of Atheist Republic, people constantly say like, oh, once we topple the Islamic Republic, the next government will make Islam illegal. Yeah. And I'm like, no, I would like, we don't want that. We want secularism.
Right.
Secularism means the government stays out of people's, like provides an environment where everybody could promote their ideas and without fear for their safety. And that we need governments and institutional organizations to international organizations to create an environment where it's safe for us to fight each other's ideologies, by and I just mean like talk, okay,
right,
not like physical, right. That's all we want, okay. If the governments want to have any influence over ideas, the main thing should be through education, okay. And I think that's it, like, because it's not taking any side, but it's just that they're promoting critical thinking skills from early on in school, and I think that already is going to eliminate religion if you just teach critical thinking skills like that, in schools. I think UN could do that. UN could pass a resolution that adds to the requirements that they have for education in schools in different countries, for that standard to include critical thinking skills, basic critical thinking skills in elementary school. That's the way that UN could actually, now that I think about it, delete not just Islam but all religions. Just do that. Yeah.
I mean, it's done a lot. It's done a lot over the last few years. You can see that by a handful of different polls. The UK as well as the US, we've made some progress. So us atheists and non-believers and whatnot, woohoo! We're bigger slice of the pie now.
Yeah. Also, I don't think by enslave their population, I don't think it means like David
like
means
literal slavery. Yeah.
Literal slavery. I think
it's
just
like
means
mental.
And also United Nations is very much in the main priority of a lot of people think United Nations main priority is human rights, okay? But the United Nations main priority is peace, okay, and also border integrity, so recognizing the sovereignties of countries, and basically not letting anybody mess with that. So this will also go against that. Like if United Nations wants to enforce too much on every country, and then there wouldn't be a United Nations, because people would not. For the United Nations to survive, it requires a voluntarily membership of all these countries within the United Nations. Like if you tell all these Islamic countries, like, hey, your religion has just been canceled, like, okay, how about we don't have a UN then? How about that?
Right. That was the last point I was going to bring up, which is like, you know, at the end of the day, technically the United Nations only works because we all think it works. So as long as that's the case, which it still currently is, but yeah, at any point in time, if enough countries are just like, we don't want to do this anymore, they could just leave. So yeah, I mean, it's a good point, Adam.
Adam's like, UN is going to antagonize a quarter of the global population. Yeah, that would be the end of the UN. Basically.
Yeah, it wouldn't be great.
All right. Thank you so much, Lilypad, for another $20 super chat. Very generous. Thank you so much. Lilypad is asking, regarding the Patreon question, what about the aspect of any moral implication of bypassing violence screening for children? Like, is that okay? What do you understand?
So she's asking about the question just a second ago about the rendering, the protests, and
okay.
So I think
no. Continue explaining that.
So Lilypad is asking about the last question that was about rendering the protests against the PRC right now into like computer generated animated stuff.
So
get past
things that
YouTube censors.
Yeah, so YouTube cannot show real life events that are violent, but you could show an AI rendering of that maybe. So that it passes YouTube filters. So that's the question. Okay.
And what Lilypad is asking is, would doing that be something that is potentially harmful, specifically like, you know, the violent screening that occurs for children? So like, for instance, if you make an account on YouTube and you say that you're a certain age, YouTube will restrict certain things from you ever being able to search it or view it or whatever. And these are, you know, standard protections that occur in a lot of digital platforms for underage individuals. It's hard to know, I think. And I think one reason is because a lot of times it is so easy to bypass that stuff in general, right? It's not super hard to lie about your age. And I don't know if by doing that specific thing about rendering the protests into like computer generated animated type, you know, videos, I don't know if that would be something that would increase that amount of harm that's already being done by the children that are already bypassing the censors. This technically would be something that is purposefully trying to bypass those censors. But unfortunately, there is actually a huge problem with this already on YouTube. Like, there was an investigation done years ago about this, that pretty much all of the major platforms have way too much of all of the very, very bad things that we could list off that would get YouTube to strike this video. So I don't know that doing that for this particular country's protests, for this particular segment of a thing, would add that much to the YouTube space that already skirts those censors. But I would say that I think that question is worth discussing if somebody were going to go through with it. I would agree that you should have that conversation before making those videos. I just think where I would stand currently is I don't know that it would add so much to it that it would be that it would cause more negative harm than what is already occurring. Right? Does that make sense? Or
I just think that age restriction is just, we need to make it so that when something is age restricted, it doesn't just destroy your views so dramatically. Right, so you could,
that's fair,
at the same time make sure that something is not available to children, but also it's like the people who are above that age, it's just keeps that thing is being shown to them. You know what I mean? So it's not like it's not a like a death sentence to your video just because it's been age restricted, right?
I'm sorry, no. I was just going to say that is something that is a problem. YouTube likes the things that are for all ages and evergreen, right? Like they like that stuff. They don't like the stuff that's specifically about January 4th of, like.
No, I mean, yeah, but like, no, I think YouTube and Google in general likes to get the content that people want to that specific person, right? So even if children can see it, but you want it, I think then it should basically I mean, if you're making a video like that, your audience is not children anyways, right? So if it gets age restricted, well, why is my viewership just dropping to like nearly like so dramatically? This was not for children, so make it age restricted, but like make sure that it still gets seen. And I think like I understand that children can still find ways to get around stuff, but it's about convenience, right? I think like your experience all over the internet should be so convenient if you are logged into things. So the internet, like whether it's because of you're logged into Facebook or Google or Twitter or whatever, your age is recognizable. So your experience is, if you're underage, is appropriate for your age. And the reason why you're not going to go around it to see those videos is because it's just so convenient to be logged into things. You know what I mean? You're like, everything is tailored for me. Like, why would I log out? Because so for example, a lot of the reasons why people sometimes pay for things is not because they can't go around it without paying. They can, but it's just has been made so convenient. The paid version has been so convenient. So this could be the same thing. I'm not talking about paid version here. I'm just saying in the same way, YouTube, Google, Facebook can just make it so convenient for people to be logged in and give their age so that they wouldn't even want to go around things.
I see that as a good solution. I do see that as a good answer to this. What about the specific question of essentially purposefully putting something out there that would in general be age restricted, purposefully putting something out there that skirts that restriction that then kids would be able to access? Do you think there are moral implications of that? I think that's where
I think you could still, you could like, no, I think YouTube just recently came out and a whole bunch of anime violence is now also getting, I don't know, demonetized.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know why.
So I mean, that's definitely something. It's hard to know, I think, because it's like we don't allow, like on certain things, we don't allow like sexualized imagery or whatever, but then you can post up the main character of some really, popular anime right now, and the character is like super sexualized, she just has basically no clothing on and, all these suggestive poses and whatever. And it's like, if that were a human that took that picture, we would pull that off, but it's an animated, it's an animated picture. And so we allow that to stay up. It's an odd line for me, I think.
I think I don't know enough about child psychology to know where the lines of these things should be, right? And I think
that's good. Yeah, that's a good point. We probably should investigate from that perspective, and like would that be something that would cause such negative harm to the psychological well-being?
Yeah,
I mean, I'm not going to be turning any of these protest videos into AI generated, so I'm not. But again, I would say anybody that would be considering that, definitely think about this question here. So
all right, we're getting a lot of super chats, so thank you guys. So let's go through these. Sid gave us a $5 super chat saying, "How can Islam be defeated as long as I think there's an as it is politically enforced? It will thrive and continue to poison societies. Political implications keep it alive." I don't think so. I think it's the opposite. I think the more politically it's enforced, the faster it's going to die. I mean, look at Iran, for example. Right now, Iran is the country that is producing the highest number of ex-Muslims per second. It's a record in history. Like there's nothing like this has ever happened in history. Like we have half of the population, if you can believe the latest data, right? Half of the population have left religion within one generation. half a population, close to half a
lot.
population. That is insane. Okay.
Yeah.
And Islam is politically enforced. Like, this is the country where Islam is politically enforced the most. So the country in the world where Islam is politically enforced the most is the country in the world that is producing the highest exodus from Islam on the planet, okay, and religion on the as a whole. So that is insane. So I think it's the opposite. I think when you enforce something upon people, they are more likely to be like, well, screw that. I don't like that, right? I think religion grows mostly when it's when the believers in that religion are victimized and isolated or demonized and stuff like that, right? But I'm not saying that means it's a good thing to politically enforce Islam, right?
Mm-hmm.
We are against politically enforcing religion for other reasons, okay? But when it comes to how can Islam be defeated, I think there's a mix of things that help with that. Like I said in the previous question, teaching children critical thinking skills from an early age. I think that's going to have a huge influence. Activism, anti-religion activism. I think that has a huge impact, especially in the Islamic world. Also, just economic development and increasing in prosperity. The more you could make people care about this world rather than the next one, the less influential religion is going to be. Yeah. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, all super, super great points. I think for sure in general, just not teaching people what to think, but how to think, right? That age-old adage is super, super important, and it's real. It does make people choose better decisions that harm less people. That's just what we see time and time again. And yeah, raising the standard of living across the board, I think, is also going to do that. It's interesting that you find that correlation, not necessarily a causation, but it is a very interesting correlation that you find.
Yes.
That the more economically well off somebody is, the less likely they are to be religious, and at the very least, less likely to be hardcore fundamentalist, which is important. That's a huge step. So, yeah, I agree with you.
And also, people who disagree with what you just said usually bring up anecdotes
of course.
Yeah, especially like Bin Laden and stuff. But again, that's anecdotes.
Right,
yeah.
Exactly. That one guy defeats somehow, I don't know, millions of people's experiences, but whatever. Yeah.
All right. We have a super chat from Tehrim Logmani. Tehrim Logmani. $7 Canadian. Thank you so much for the super chat. The question is, how can we protect our nieces and nephews in the family from Islam when now Islam is empowered in Canada? They are only 4 and 7. Okay, I think I'm gonna sound like I'm gonna keep repeating myself here, but I think it goes back again to teaching them critical thinking skill. I don't know if Islam is being empowered in Canada. I think there's just there's more immigration in Canada, and like Canada is like.
I'd love to know what they mean by that. Islam is empowered in Canada. Yeah.
I mean, there are certain narratives that the government has that sometimes are no, that's not the right way to protect minorities, but okay, whatever.
I thought there was a larger movement of Sikhs in Canada than there was Muslims, but maybe I was just
no. But the Sikhs are not promoting Sikhism, right?
Okay,
so
okay.
So
that's fair.
The Sikhs are hey, we're just here, we're part of everything, and we're cool. That's fine.
That's fair.
But so I think what they're worried about. I think here's the thing. Generally in North America, I think what worries me about what young, especially men, could get attracted to Islam is from right-leaning people right now, right? It's more like Andrew Tate kind of people who might be promoting Islam than Muslims themselves, right?
That alpha male bro culture.
Yes.
Dude, come on, bro. You gotta be tough, man. Otherwise the chicks aren't gonna dig you, man. Shut up.
All right. Well, I mean, I mean, there's some truth to that. What you
confidence,
just
though,
said.
but it's
Yeah,
confidence.
yeah.
But that goes across the board for anybody. That doesn't freaking matter. It's just, but
Okay.
not like being a jerk to people actively. Like that's not gonna win you over fans.
Yes. But in general, if you want to protect, you know, a 4-year-old and a 7-year-old from Islam and all other religion and all other dogma and all other superstition, okay, I think there's a lot of resources for making learning critical thinking skills fun, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of cool, colorful books. I don't think you need to necessarily tell them about religion, and like I think that might even backfire on you. Like if you tell your kids like, oh, Islam bad, Islam bad, they might, like, as they grow, they're going to go through a rebellious phase, and they're like, let me check out this thing that they told me not to check out because that sounds pretty badass, and I have to, like, you know, so maybe that's not going to be a good idea, right? So instead, just focusing on, you know, teaching them the basic understanding of what's a good argument. What's like 4 or 7 might be too young for that. I don't know what age. What age do you think is a good age to start teaching kids? I know it should be in elementary school.
So I think at the age of 4, children are capable of understanding the very broad strokes of it. So I remember one of my high school teachers when I was a senior at my high school. He was writing a children's book that was focused on this, and one of the things that this book focused on was it said things like it showed a picture of a puppy, right? And it says, this is our puppy Spot, what does Spot's fur feel like? And then you would flip the page and there would be a little spot that's like fur, and then you would touch it, right? And then it would ask you questions about like things you learned after touching the fur. And so basically the whole point of this book was to try to get children at a very young age to start to understand, like, what is the process of testing things, right? Like there was a point where it said, like, here's a picture of a slug. Slugs feel scaly and rough, right? And then you flip the page and then you touch this thing and it's like kind of this like weird, like putty or whatever, and it feels kind of slimy. And it's like, oh no, we were wrong. Like now we have to change our hypothesis. So like I think you can do those broad things like that at that age of 4. And I agree. I don't think what you do is you don't go in and you say, hey, let me let me tell you how ridiculous it is that the story of Muhammad splitting the moon. Like you don't do that. What you do is you go in and you say, like, hey, what do we think about something? How do we know that? How could we figure that out? And you go that, broad aspect of it, because it's those basic skills that are going to be the building blocks that allow you to get to the point of, well, the refutation of premise 2 in your argument, that's what's going to get you to that point, right?
Right. And for that's for like a much younger age, but like an example for something for a somebody a little bit older. I think I don't know what age this is good for, okay? But it says, like, look at this is an illustrated book of bad arguments, right? Mm-hmm. by Ali al-Musawi. Okay.
Those characters on the front look adorable. Like I'd read that book. So
yeah, like it goes through different arguments, and like,
oh my god,
you have examples of bad arguments and what fallacy that is, right? So it's a pretty adorable, cute book.
That's so cool.
And I think there's a lot of resources like this for children.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There was I'm gonna forget her name, and this sucks because she was really cool. And a couple of years ago there was this, she was like 13, I think. And her parents are atheists, and she was raised secular, non-religious, and she ended up writing like a children's book about how all children are stardust, and it was talking about like the creation of the universe and all the like science that we know about the Big Bang and like all this stuff. And it was really, really cool. And like Seth Andrews ended up doing an interview with her. And I mean, obviously her parent was there, her father was there, so because she was 14. But yeah, there is definitely stuff out there like that. It's harder to find for sure, but that would be my suggestion too. Go find stuff like that and have it be more in a generalized sense rather than specifically combating Islam. So
okay, we're getting more super chats, so let's go
God.
through this. Thank you guys. All right, so David is saying, Was Mo, I think he means Prophet Muhammad, was Mo some kind of a Christian at some point of time? I read his first wife was a Zion, and Waraka, the Zion priest, officiated his wedding.
The X-T-I-A-N is Christian.
Oh,
Mhm.
Christian.
Yeah.
What? Okay. I read his first wife. Okay, so let me read it again. I read his first wife was a Christian. Why did I say Zion? And Waraka, the Christian priest, officiated his wedding. His first wife, Khadija was Christian. Okay, I mean Khadija was the first wife of Muhammad. Was Abrahamic, had Abrahamic faith. There's no. Okay, so which one do you want to know? Do you want to know the Islamic narrative or the actual historical narrative? Okay, the Islamic narrative is that Khadija married when Khadija married Muhammad. Muhammad has still not received his revelation from God, right? So technically he wasn't a Muslim, right? But even though anyways, I'm not going to get into too much details, but technically he wasn't a Muslim, and Khadija was not a Muslim. But what were they? What religion they were? So they were monotheists. They believed in the religion of Abraham, but they didn't believe in the Christian version of religion. So they believed in the prophets. They believed in Moses as a prophet. They believed in Jesus as a prophet. They believed in Noah and Abraham as a prophet. So they were Abrahamic, but they didn't believe in the Christian narrative of this Abrahamic religion. They didn't believe in the Jewish narrative of this Abrahamic religion, but they did believe the God of these prophets, right? So that's the religion that Khadija and Muhammad and the people who were on the right side even before Islam had, right? That's the Islamic narrative. But the thing is that the Islamic narrative is not actual history, okay? Actual history, these are just fiction. These are just stories.
Yeah.
The actual history is that, first of all, we don't even know if Muhammad's any of these stories even happened. We don't even know if Khadija was real. Okay, we know very little about what Muhammad did. We don't even know if Muhammad's name was actually Muhammad. Okay, we almost know right now that Muhammad was never a Muslim. We almost know now that the religion of Islam was not started by Muhammad. It was started like 200. It was created somewhat 200 years after Muhammad by the Abbasid dynasty. The religion of the Arabs at the time that they started invading other places around Arabia at that time was something closer to Christianity. It was a sect of Christianity that didn't believe Jesus was the Son of God or God himself. So they seem to have been Christians as well at that point. So it's not just So I don't think this is what you were referring to, but strangely, yes, Muhammad seemed to be whatever the Muhammad character is based on, because it was based on a person. Whatever that person was, it seems like their ideas were in line with a very unique sect of Christianity. Yeah.
I think that part of Muhammad's story is some of the most fascinating stuff. Khadija is a super interesting character, especially with where Muhammad ends up going with a lot of the proclamations and stuff, because it's just like, I mean, talk about somebody that just broke all the rules. I mean, she was educated, she was a successful businesswoman, she was married before him. Like, there were just so many things, and I just think that's really interesting. But yeah, I'd love to start seeing some more information on Muhammad mythicism stuff. There's a bit out there about Jesus. It's not accepted by mainstream scholarship, but it is still really interesting scholarship, in my opinion. And go ahead.
That Jesus was what?
A myth. Yeah, Jesus mythicism. Like, he was never a real person. There's no character. There's no human being that any of this is actually based on. I would love to see some more scholarship in terms of Muhammad in that sense too.
What we're saying is actually more in line with what is accepted from Jesus. Okay, so what is scholarship? What is right now biblical scholarship accepts with Jesus is that it is based on a real character.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
But
Most
the
likely
story.
a conglomeration of characters. Most
Yes,
likely
but
a couple of people that they put together.
yeah, but like the things he said and the things he did, we don't know if he'd actually like. It's very
Right.
likely stories,
Right. But
So
we do accept that there was at least a person. But there are
Right.
some people out there who say, no, we've investigated and we say it's not based on a person at all.
So Jesus mythicism would be the people who say that there was no person to begin with, right?
Basically, yes.
So based on that categorization, we don't have Muhammad mysticism either, because what we're saying is that there was a dude.
Right. And that's
Okay.
and what I was saying was I would very much find it interesting to see more investigation into that potential mythicism aspect, right? I just think that stuff is fun. I'm not a Jesus mythicist myself, but I think it's very interesting scholarship, and there are some really cool connections that can be discovered. And yeah, how cool would it be if you could actually like show like like we found something that was written, you know, a long time ago that was like, we're just making up this guy Muhammad, like we're gonna write all this stuff down. That'd be really cool. That'd be really interesting. So
all right, so let's go to David's question. David's saying, thank you so much. Sorry, not David. That was David before, but Sid Dave now with the $5 super chat. Thank you so much for the $5 super chat. Sid is saying, who was more brutal to Iranians, Alexander, Genghis Khan, or the caliphs? Do you think many Iranians may have Mongol ancestry as Mongols assimilated there? Okay, this is an easy answer. It's Genghis Khan by a mile. By a mile. Like Genghis Khan, like to any place that Genghis Khan invaded was like the level of brutality was, and the Mongols were insane. Like, I don't know if people understand what major. I don't even know why that event of the Mongols invading like half of the known world and just massacring as many people that has potentially cooled down the planet to that level. Like Genghis Khan killed more people than in total numbers, not just in percentage, which is crazy. In total number, more than Mao, Hitler combined, and Stalin combined. And he did that without guns, without tanks, and at the
without
time
cars.
without cars, at the time that the population of the earth was a lot smaller. So that was insane. Yeah, he wiped out entire cities. The caliphs.
Has there ever been like a major motion picture that like tries to do like a follow his life, or it's like a biography? Like that seems like
I saw a minor movie once about him, but it was
that seems like something that would like really just get all the Oscar voters just like, you know, all excited, you know. That just seems like the exact type of movie. There'd be romance, there'd be strategy, there'd be, you know, violence and war. Like that just seems exactly what
Yeah, I don't know. Understand? It's the most insane invasion of human history, and not that many people are interested in knowing more about it. Like it was like
strange.
It wasn't rivers of blood. It was like oceans of blood. Right. It was insane. Yeah. I mean, like the caliphs or whoever invaded, like the Arabs who invaded countries around them, they didn't completely destroy the infrastructure. Like even when they invaded Jerusalem, like the Church of Holy Sepulchre, it remained intact, right? Alexander, like the most infamous thing, like the most like unpopular thing he did is that when he invaded like the Persian Empire, I don't know for what reason, which was very out of character for Alexander, he burned Persepolis, which is like So, but other than that, he was pretty like he didn't even kill the kings he was fighting. He was like, okay, I defeated you. Okay, I respect you as a ruler. You can continue being king now. Just make sure that you behave and pay me taxes. Like he didn't even kill the people, the leaders and the commanders and the kings that he defeated, right? And he was like, Alexander, when he went to Persia, he was like, oh, this is amazing. I love this culture. My generals you have to accept Persian culture now. We're Persians now. Like, that's what he did. Alexander was like, okay, we have to Persianize our culture. And his commanders hated him for that. Like I thought we went there to Hellenize the world, not become Persians ourselves. And
Right.
he took a Persian wife, and he was like, yeah, guys, take Persian wives. We need to. This is, we need to be Persians now. So I don't know. So yeah, none of these people compare even remotely close to what the Mongols did. It was insane. Yeah. Anyways, let's move on. Sorry, I took too long to answer that. Last super chat by Sid is saying, Muhammad went crazy after Khadija died. If Khadija had lived, Muhammad wouldn't have, I think you mean, wouldn't have dared to reveal a wife-beating verse. Khadija would have taken him to task. Okay, yeah, sure. These are all fake stories, but it's fun to think about it like that. Yeah, maybe
some fanfic.
Yeah, I mean, these are all fantasy, so why not? Yes, we could say you're right about that. But just to be clear, all of these stories about Muhammad and hadith and everything was added by, well, not all of it, but most of it, by the Abbasid dynasty, as a way to justify many things that they want to do themselves, right?
But Armin, I mean, we have the chain of narration. I mean, how can you go against that? I mean, his sister's best friends, uncles, neighbors, dog walkers, come on, that guy's super reliable. I listened one time to an apologist list off 12 people, and it's like, well, he got it, and I was like, oh my god, why do you think that sounds credible?
That is the least. Yeah, guys, Islam uses the least credible methodology known to mankind, which is basically oral tradition, as a way to justify these stories being real. Okay, and they're like, oh, they actually, with a straight face, Daniel Hairaju on his shows claims that this is a more reliable standard than peer-reviewed academic research that we right now have in the modern world. I was like, sure, buddy, sure. Oral tradition, okay. Famous for its reliability. Oral tradition, famous for its reliability.
Nobody ever gets anything wrong in that.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, these stories are all fake. It's probably like if I wanted to know, the real actual story is probably a scholar, a so-called Islamic scholar, right? At sometime during that Busset period, was trying to, some powerful rich people were beating their wives, and they were like, can you give us a hadith that makes that okay? And they were like, or can we have a Quranic verse that makes that okay? And they were like, sure. We got you. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I just heard Allah say something. What was that you wanted? Yeah, that was it. That's what Allah said.
We are pretty sure we remember that Muhammad heard this from Allah.
Oh, do you remember that story?
Yes. And yeah, we understand that we have Quranic verses that predates even Muhammad himself, okay? But the Quran at its entirety was a work in progress. Some of it was before Muhammad, some of it was during Muhammad, and some of it was after Muhammad, okay? Quran was a consistent work in progress. It wasn't like a revelation that happened during Muhammad. Anyways, let me know if you guys want me to do shows on this revisionist history of Islam, because it's very fascinating. Okay. I love it. I'm doing that a lot in the Persian show. All right, next Patreon question. What are your thoughts on Trumplicans?
I think that's a hard word. Trump Republicans, but that's
Trump Republicans. Okay, that's actually cool. Trump Republicans, Trumplicans. Okay, Trumplicans holding the speakership out of Kevin McCarthy's hand until they get their committee and subcommittee assignments. Can you give us a short 101 of what's happening? Because I know there was 3 votes and stuff, but yeah, go on.
Basically, every early January, the United States Congress brings all the new people that are elected in the last session. The majority party gets to pick their person that basically runs the House of Congress, that runs the House of Representatives for this term. So for this term, this year, whoever the Republicans end up voting for, most likely will be the person that gets to say, like, this is what we talk about next, or this is what we won't talk about that, or let's hold a vote. So yeah, that's what they're voting for. The Speaker of the House is the person who basically is in control of the House of Representatives for this term. Was that what you want, or did you want me to explain the votes?
So no, that's great. That's fantastic. And my understanding is that there seems to be a major infighting between Republicans, and they look ridiculous right now.
You need 218 votes because that is the majority for that particular body. In the second round, the Democratic nominee for the House, because even though the Democrats are not in majority, they can still nominate somebody, because you don't technically get it just because you're in the majority. It's just that you have more votes, so you're more likely to get it, right? But the Democratic nominee actually got like 3 more votes than McCarthy.
But that's too much data for our non-American audience. But the main thing to understand is that Republicans are destroying each other, which is great. They're fighting with each other, right? They look ridiculous. And if the specific thing that is being referred to here, it hasn't happened for the past 100 years, apparently. Like, that's how insane this is. That you have like a one party who is like has the majority in the House and not be able to vote on the speakership. Right?
It could really things up because the Speaker of the House is required to swear in the next Congress.
Wow. Okay. So this is good because we're showing to Republicans, look what you have elected. They can't even do something that was so easy to do for the past 100 years. Like, you guys cannot even have a speaker. Like, you guys are supposed to run a country, but you can't even get together and pick a speaker. Like, that's how this is good. This is good. I keep this. And I heard like it's so like even pro-Trump people are now turning on Trump. Yes. You know, like, I don't know. This is great. Like, keep going, Republicans. Keep eating yourself.
Yeah, I'm happy about it personally.
Yeah. I thought only leftists are capable of eating their own, but apparently, like, the right-leaning people used to be like better at like, okay, we're together, like, put our differences aside, let's be united. Like,
well, in fairness, Armin, in fairness, we've been telling the people on the right to listen to us for years. I didn't think that they would pick up that, but I mean, hey, glad they picked up the infighting and the eating your own. And I mean, I would have appreciated the picking up the human rights part, but it's fine. It's fine.
Yeah. Oh, D is actually pointing out that this is not good. D is saying this brings everything to a halt. Nothing happens now. Not good. Yeah, I mean, not good short term, but long. Yeah, you're right. Short term, this is bad, but long term, if this could rid us from more Republican influence, I think long term this might be a good thing.
And it is possible that in the next handful of days, 6 Republican members of the House of Representatives just switch sides to the Dems, because that says the Democratic nominee is only 5 or 6 votes away from getting the majority, and they could just do that just to screw with the rest of the GOP, but if it does back everything up and shut everything down, that could also possibly just raise the ire of right-wing voters in the country, and so cause more infighting. I mean, I don't know. We'll see, but I'm eating popcorn while watching it. That's for sure.
Usually that's not a good sign.
Yeah.
Usually your country's politics are good when you're not interested in it.
I've told you this, that it's like we're in this boat where it just feels like we're on this like, nice little tightrope walk thing, and it's like at any point in time the entire country could just completely explode, but I'm trying to have a positive outcome. I'm trying to have a positive view of it.
If it's interesting, that means something has gone terribly wrong, okay, in your politics.
Yes. That is true.
Okay. So next patron question. I haven't heard about this, by the way. Thoughts on the removal of metal detectors in the Republican-controlled House? Why would they do that? I haven't heard this.
I hadn't heard that news either. I think that's a really stupid idea. Why? I don't know what else could possibly. I don't know. I don't know what argument you could have. I don't know what argument you could have.
You guys suck so much. that we just want you to like. No, I shouldn't say that. YouTube.
Yeah.
Just
I can see where you're going, but I have no idea what the reasonable argument is to say like, hey, I think it actually should be okay if we have less security at our nation's capital. I have no idea what the argument would be for that. I saw this and just thought it was ridiculous. I was like, oh my gosh, it makes no sense to me.
Maybe like you get your metal detectors back and once you pick a speaker, maybe that's what it is. Like like
that's kind of funny though. It's like you guys are in timeout.
But like why? Like is it costing them too much? Like can they not afford it? What is
God? We're in a much bigger problem in the US if we can't afford metal detectors in Congress.
Okay, I'm actually very curious right now. Okay, so on first day back in power, Republicans removed metal detectors placed in House chambers after Capitol riot.
Okay. That gives a little bit more context though. So because here's why. As stupid as it may seem, it isn't so the metal detectors that the Republicans are removing are the additional security measures that were put in place after the January 6th riots and that stuff. So the reason that's a little bit different than if there were already in place these security measures for decades that they were pulling down. So these are additional measures that were set up specifically after January 6th, which again, I feel really comfortable with saying, I don't see what the argument to taking away the metal detectors would still be. I still think it's reasonable to keep the metal detectors there. But because these are metal detectors that only got set up since January 6th, it's not like they have a long-standing precedent of being there. And that it is specifically around an event that the right wing of the United States is very much, propagandizing and using as their talking point, right? So,
okay, so here, Lauren Boebert is now explaining to us why she's so excited about this. Republican Representative Lauren Boebert, who has been open about her intent to carry a concealed weapon in the Capitol building, told reporters she had been waiting for this day for a long time. Wow, so excited about this.
The next line.
Yeah. The next line says, I think the metal detectors need to be removed from the Capitol, filled with, what is that?
Tannerite
and blown up. Oh, wow. She added, she wants them to be blown up, the metal detector. Not just removed, but just blown up.
That's amazing.
Wow, this is like you Americans pick them really like I don't know
she's not my representative.
Okay. What is happening down there, you guys? Clean this shit up. Okay. All right. Boebert is one of a handful of Republicans who have criticized the metal detectors since they were first erected. Just 1 week after the riot. Okay, so here's her line of reasoning. So this is why she's excited about this. I am legally permitted to carry my firearm in Washington, D.C. and within the Capitol complex. She tweeted at the time, metal detectors outside of the House would not have stopped the violence we saw last week. It's just another political stunt by Speaker Pelosi.
Here's the problem with that sentence that the metal detectors outside the House would not have stopped the violence we saw last week. That is actually a fair point. Like that is actually a fair point because yes, metal detectors outside of the House of Representatives wouldn't have done anything for January 6th.
Yeah.
I would still say, despite Lauren, stumbling around and finally, stepping on a correct point, metal detectors in the House of Congress. I don't see why. I don't see what the reason for not having extra security for.
I don't think their intention of the metal detectors was to stop the riots.
No, I agree. I also agree with that. I don't think that was the intention. Right. She was correct with that statement, but I don't think it actually addressed. Yeah. Yes, completely agree.
But also, I don't understand why. Like, I like my guns, so get rid of the metal detectors. Can't you just keep the metal detectors and be like, okay, we go through them. You have a gun. You give the gun to the security. and then you show their permit for having the gun,
Mhm.
and then you go through the metal detector and you get your gun, and then you go. Like, can't you have the metal detectors and your permit too
Mhm.
for the Congress
And
people to have the
I also
gun at the
don't
same time?
I also don't know that it is actually legal to be carrying firearms on
No, but like I'm
the
just saying, let's
grounds.
say for example, like
Mhm.
you really like, oh no, I want to have my gun
Mhm.
inside, the house.
Sure.
Okay, you still don't have to, like, even if we give you that, allow you that, which I don't think you should, but let's say we did, you can still keep the metal detectors. The metal
Right.
detectors have more use than taking your gun away from you. Whatever.
Right.
How about this? How about, I mean, I don't agree with this, but let's say we went with, like, you keep your gun, right? How about you keep your gun, but the metal detectors make sure that other people don't come there with the gun, so that you're the
Right.
only person with the gun. How about
Right.
that? How about, like,
Or at the
like,
very
wouldn't
least, we know the people that have these
the gun?
weapons so that we
Yeah.
can be paying attention and keeping our eyes on them. Yeah. I mean, yeah.
But just to be clear, I don't think it's a good idea for Congress people to, like, imagine if there's a shootout and, like, imagine if we have a scene where Congress people have all their guns out and they're, like, shooting at something in the house. I mean, this is going to end up really bad. I think, like,
I
you're going to have I think you're going to have Congress people accidentally killing other Congress people. That's what
we've
you're gonna
had
get.
in the past, we've had fistfights occur on the
YouTube, we're
House
not
floor and stuff.
endorsing for
No,
killing of anybody.
no.
We're just, like, talking about
Right.
accidents that could happen with, like, when Congress people are just shooting at it. Yeah,
Yeah.
but go on.
No,
Go on.
we have had some very interesting stories in the past of members of Congress in the United States, like literally fist fighting each other and beating each other on the House floor and stuff. But yeah,
Okay.
I
But even
think
if it's not at each other, like, I mean, if there's an event, like if there's a attack or something, I just think, like, if Boebert takes out her gun, I think, like, she
she's more
accidentally,
likely to hurt a member of Congress than I know.
yeah,
I
then
agree.
get them. Yeah, I don't
Yeah,
know.
totally. And again, I think you came at this from like 3 different angles. I came at this from 3 different angles. I don't think there's a good argument to take the metal detectors away at all.
Yeah.
But yeah, at least again, a little bit more
What
context
is he
helps
trying
us.
to do? Like, without, like, oh, I want to have my gun. Remove the metal detectors. Like, what if it's illegal? If you don't, if you're not allowed to take your gun in, what are you planning to do without the metal detectors? You're trying to sneak them in? Like,
Right.
is that what you're trying to do? Because, like, I think what you need to, if you want your gun in there, what you need to fight is not the metal detectors. It's the rule. Because if the rule is still there and we have no metal detectors, are you just going to, like, illegally be like, okay, I'm just going to take, like, there's no metal detectors. Well, screw the rules. I'm just going to take them in. Like, you should get arrested, I guess. I don't know.
Again, I don't see a good argument for, like, hey, the capital of our government, should we decrease security or keep the security at the level it is right now? It's like, why would we ever decrease security? That seems bad. But hey, I'm not a member of the House of Representatives, so
Yeah. Anyways, let's go to this one. Should the U.S. House of Representatives adopt the House of Commons model, where in a popularity of seats, not a majority govern the House?
I was a
I
bit
think,
confused at this too.
very briefly. Should the U.S. House, guys, I think the sentence structure is, should the House of Representatives adopt the House of Commons model, wherein a plurality of seats, not a majority, govern the House? Oh, okay. So you don't need a majority to govern the House. You only need the highest number of seats to govern the House. But you don't need that in the House because you only have 2 parties.
Right.
So you need a plurality of seats when you have more than 2 parties. When you have only 2 parties, the plurality of seats would be the majority.
Right.
The plurality and the majority would be the same thing. How could you, if you have only 2 options? Okay, if you are highest, if the party that has the highest seats also has the majority of seats, you need at least 3 parties for you to have the highest number of seats, but also have an option of not having the majority. Like, you could be like, I don't know, 40%, and then 20%, and 30, do 30, 40, right? So you're not the majority, but you are the plurality. You need to have at least 3 parties for that to happen. So it's not going to happen. So why would you even? Majority and plurality mean the same thing when you have 2 parties.
Right. And I mean, yeah, and just the way that the United States elections and stuff is set up, the idea of having a viable third and fourth party is just really not something that would make sense.
Wait, Asian American is saying no. In the current plurality, Hakeem Jeffries would be speaker. So you're saying within?
So right.
Okay.
So currently, as it sat, right, the last vote that I remember, technically, the Democratic nominee for the House Speaker got more votes than the most votes that was gotten by one of the Republican nominees. But because that number is not above the number for the majority, the vote kept going, right? And so what Gajian is saying is that if it was currently in that plurality system, the speakership would go to the Democratic nominee. But if we have that rule for just this particular thing, then that would be problematic, right? We would either need to try and institute that on a full scale across the federal government or not, right?
Yes. And I'm gonna post a link to our members only on the community tab. If you want to come talk to us live on air, the link is there now. But you have very small amount of time to take advantage of this link. Okay. Let's go to the last picture question. So by the time we answer this question, if nobody is up here, we're gonna end the stream. Okay. So picture question. It is a common occurrence for U.S. state agencies to disperse homeless encampments. What do you think states should do with people who refuse shelter? Oh my God, this is such a hard question.
Mm-hmm.
This is such a difficult question because if it was an easy thing, if there was an answer, we wouldn't have a homeless problem. Like there's so many, like in Vancouver, we have that. In certain areas.
Some of the most successful programs that have occurred in the United States. One of them was the entire state of Utah, if I remember correctly. But there is a pretty successful organization that mainly focuses in Southern California, I believe. But one of the main programs has literally just to be, I know this is going to sound weird, give them houses. Just on state dollar, purchase houses, purchase accommodations for these people. We're not talking mansions, but we're not talking a cardboard box on the sidewalk. Actually purchasing these abodes for people, because then all of the other underlying issues can actually be addressed. Because most of the people who are chronically homeless in the United States, and just kind of North America in general, just kind of focusing on those countries, there are other underlying issues, oftentimes addiction or mental illness, or being kicked out of your home due to, family issues with, religion and stuff. That's a huge LGBTQ teens in the United States are a high percentage of individuals that are chronically homeless. But in Utah, they ended up spending $10,000 less, I think, per person that they gave a home then compared to just trying to take care of them through emergency services. So when emergency services happen for an individual that is chronically homeless, or chronically unhoused, then the emergency services are paid for entirely by the taxpayer dollar. That number can be dramatically reduced by giving individuals a place to live, because then you can address those issues in a way that does not cost the taxpayer. So you look into Utah's system. I'm pretty sure it was Utah. I could be wrong and it could be Nevada, but I'm pretty sure it was Utah, because I remember being surprised that it was the Mormon state that did it. But some of those programs have been super successful. That's what I would look into.
So, a lot of right-leaning people might say that the problem with that solution is that a lot of people are going to take advantage of the system.
Yeah, totally.
Like they're like, oh, okay, so I could just get a free house if I just don't work, right? What do you respond to? I have a response to that, but what do you respond?
Yeah, I think the general response to that, which is the same thing, because that's kind of the same narrative that's played out for a lot of social programs. And I just think we have so much data Historically, sociologically, psychologically speaking, that just shows how BS that is. That is just not the case. The vast majority of people who are in these programs are in the programs because they very much need them and are attempting to do things to better their life through this program. So, yeah, that
So,
would be my first
even if it is the case for some people, what data shows is that it's enough of not a case for it to be worth it.
Right.
Like you could go find examples of the situations where this person doesn't deserve a house. This person is just taking advantage of the system, right? Yeah, but you cannot just like because of those anecdotes go and destroy a model that is like, you know, there's data that shows that it's working just because of a couple of bad actors, right?
Right.
Also, I just think like when it comes to, you know, the incentives for people to work and make money, there needs to be, and how much people would, the lifestyle, how low the lifestyle goes if people don't work, right? There's a certain level that it shouldn't go below.
I agree.
Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Like we want people to have the incentive to work, right?
Right.
So that incentive should be like the more you work, the better lifestyle you have, okay? But we don't want people to be punished below a certain level, you know, after a certain level if they're not working for a couple of reasons, right? Like, and that minimum is that people should have a place to live. Okay, it doesn't matter how much you're working. It doesn't matter if you're leeching or not leeching, or if you like most of the people who are not working to the point that they can't even afford is like they're in a position that they are incapable, right? Of working. Like they're either handicapped or they're mentally not stable, right? So, but you should have a place to live. You should not go hungry. Okay, you should have access to food. The government needs to make sure that nobody's going hungry. Okay, you have to have access to be able to get skills, either that's education or any other skills like that. That is something that everybody should have access to. It shouldn't be only available to people that have certain amount of money. So that should be, because that is supposed to be the potential way that people could lift them out, right? You should have access to medical care. That should be, there shouldn't be a minimum for that. You should not be because you're not being productive. Your access to medical care should not be below a certain amount. And I think beyond these four, we now have a new thing that needs to be a minimum of it should be everyone should have access to, and that's internet access. Okay, internet.
That's a real tough thing to get people on board with, though, man. But I agree with you. I think that should be included right there with it. But
I think that should be a right. I think internet access should be a right. Like, because without internet access, there's no way for you to lift yourself up. Okay.
Yeah.
And actually, it's interesting because it goes. What we're seeing is the opposite of what a lot of right-leaning people say. Like, we're thinking like, oh, we need to make sure that people have the threat of homelessness there for them to be productive. But we're actually seeing it's the other way around, because once you get to that point, you cannot lift yourself out of that. You basically lose access to the resources and the very minimum amount for you. Like we basically have put you in a position that even if you have the motivation, you cannot lift yourself out of that situation, right? So in fact, it's the opposite. We need to make sure that we provide the very basic minimum for people to have the ability to lift themselves up, right?
Yeah.
After that basic needs, you could be like, okay, now if you want a better car, now if you want a bigger house, now if you want to travel,
absolutely,
now if you want to have like eat at a better restaurant,
yeah,
now you're gonna have to work harder. Okay,
you just want to set $1,000 cash on fire one night, like, yeah, you got to go out and you got to go do some extra for that. But
like, because unlike what a lot of because unlike what right-leaning people will tell you, most people are not going to be satisfied with the minimum. The vast majority of the people, okay, if you give them the minimum and the tools for them to lift themselves up beyond the minimum, they're going to be like, yeah, I want more, okay? And they're going to work harder for more. There are some people who are going to be like, okay, I have everything, so why should I
I'm comfy.
work,
I don't need to do it.
I'm not going to work.
Right.
Those are unique people, okay?
Yeah, and they're not less deserving of general health and well-being. right? Because
Yes.
that's who they
Exactly.
are, right? They don't deserve to be kicked to the side of the road and stuff, right?
Exactly.
And what was I going to say? Oh, part of this issue too is we need to shift as a global society what we find valuable in terms of productive, right? Like, is somebody who spends all their time cataloging, the history of a city for free, is that person not productive? Is that person not valuable to society? Do we have to all be factory workers? Do we have to all be, insert anything, right? Like the value of giving people that minimum threshold, right? Like you talked about, you should never go below this living standard. The value of that is it gives people the opportunity to say, what do I find as important? And how can I further that, not only for myself, but for the global society that I live in? And that's how we've gotten some of the most cool freaking things we've ever gotten, right? Is because now we have a little bit more time on our hands because we're not working 14-hour days to just make enough money to just eat, right? Now we've got time on our hands. And so then we come up with the next cool social media platform. Then we come up with the next great, nonprofit organization. Yeah, I mean, this stuff seems really obvious to me, but clearly there's a huge pushback.
Do you think it might be a better model that if instead of giving them housing, to give them the credit or like the money to get housing,
potentially,
or just give them housing?
Yeah, potentially. And I think yeah, I think it's not to say that particular model is the one that is just, gold star perfect, will never come up with anything better. But of the things that we have tried, very similar to like the medical facilities where individuals who are addicted to heroin or meth or anything, they come to these medical facilities and they're allowed to do, these things with medical professionals around. Just both of those scenarios in these two instances are things that have made more progress and have had more benefit and just radically reduced negative consequences compared to every other model we have tried. Doesn't mean that there's not a better one out there, but currently these two seem to be extremely successful.
So this is theoretical, so I don't have any empirical evidence for it, but I'm just wondering, right? I was just wondering if the better model would be, because if the government is providing the housing, okay, then the lack of competition in providing the housing might cause inefficient ways of providing that housing.
Oh, sure.
Right? So I was thinking, like, maybe instead of the government providing the housing, the government was like, hey, you have this much credit specifically for housing. Okay? Like, this is you could go get housing.
And you can
right?
spend up to that amount, but you don't necessarily have to, but it has to be for housing. That's an interesting
for housing, right? And therefore, and then you get the people to go shop for housing, and now because they're, instead of like being provided with housing, they're shopping for housing. They keep the competition element of the market intact.
Yeah, that is interesting. That is an interesting thought, because it's kind of trying to get at the best sides of both of those angles, where you're not just in this total, free market instance where you can just be screwed over. You have those regulations and you have that support system coming from the government, but at the same time, because you have that competition, you're the homemakers, the people building the homes are still going to be constantly trying to outdo each other and price
with
better.
Reduce the price, because
that's an interesting thought. Yeah, I think there probably are things like that. There are probably aspects to these types of programs that could be instituted that may make it work even better. But again, it's just amazing how successful these types of things have been,
Right. So the fear is, but by the way, this would basically mean that going from the demand side rather than the supply side, like for the government, like,
right.
Okay, so the fear is that maybe the government would not be interested in going from the demand side, because then they don't have like, if you go from the supply side and provide the housing, then you have more agencies, you have more staff,
True.
you're getting more pay, like, so there's a lot of people are thinking like maybe the solution is to just give the homeless people money, but the government will like, well, what about my government jobs? Like, what about all these offices and all these agencies that would be justified? What about all the taxpayer money that I could basically be paying myself? So there is like a.
But you could argue that by creating those newer agencies and those various jobs, that is actually providing even more people a tide that rises all boats, right? Because now you have two groups. You now have a group of individuals that weren't being paid these, let's say, higher paying jobs and stuff, benefits.
No, but those jobs would have no. But because if you had paid the homeless people money, right, to go get housing, now because of the extra demand in housing, those jobs would be
go
created
to the housing market.
Would be created in the housing market.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I would say I think that's definitely an interesting take on it. And I think that could possibly make that program even better. Yeah, for sure. But currently the best model that we have is one where essentially they just basically like gave people houses. But yeah, I mean that to me, just right here, just spitballing on it. Yeah, capitalist Armin. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I see. I mean, off the top of my head, that does sound like it could be better.
But again, we don't when it comes to this, like if rationalism tells you one thing, and empiricism tells you something else, guess which one you go with? You go with the empiricist. Yeah, right.
How things actually are in the real world.
How things actually are, right? So we could sit here and think like, oh, that makes a lot of sense, okay? But if data and research show something else, that's what you go with, right? Yeah. This is why you shouldn't be ideological about your conclusions, okay? You go with the data at least.
Right.
Prometheus is saying, Armin, look at our Canadian downtowns. People fear going there because they fear of getting mugged by homeless. I don't know what you're talking about. Only in Vancouver, there's only the East Hastings part that people fear going. I mean, they shouldn't fear going there, okay? I've been there, but where like the homeless people are harmless, okay? In fact, if anything, other people are dangerous to the homeless people more than the homeless people being dangerous to other people, right? So it's just people don't go. There's a part of downtown of Vancouver that people don't go, but let's be honest, it's not because people fear them. They don't harm anybody. It's because people don't like looking at them. It's just not an easy thing to look at. That's the main reason people don't.
There's probably a lot of congestion and traffic in downtown Vancouver like there is in downtown cities in the US, you know. But yeah, more often than not, people that are chronically unhoused, chronically homeless, like they're trying to survive and they're trying to be left alone. So
saying, Armin, did you get mugged? No, we actually went as an atheist group to help them. Like it was really, really cold. So we went there with warm socks for homeless people. And they were very grateful. They were very nice. Like they were it was so nice because even when they wanted more than one socks, they were like, they weren't like, give me, like, they were very polite. Like, can I have more than one? Like they were so gentle. They were so gentle, very, very gentle. So I don't know. I don't think you get mugged by homeless people. I think people who mug you are like,
the data just doesn't show out to be stuff like that, honestly.
Prometheus is saying they are drug addicts and they do steal a lot personal experience.
Yeah, and I think the last two words there are everything. It's not to say that hasn't happened, Prometheus, not to say that you didn't experience that. Of course not, right? But just simply to say exactly what Armin and I have said multiple times this episode, which is one personal story, one anecdote does not discount the millions or thousands or,
I mean, I'm sure they do like steal, like poverty causes people to steal, right? Yes. But I'm just saying when it comes to safety, it's just like they're not a major issue. Like
and I personally have known people that have been homeless for a period of time or are still currently due to addictions. I do know people like that for sure. Right. But again, when we actually look at the data as a whole, that just doesn't seem to be the majority.
Yeah, and also I don't know much about US, but I heard like in San Francisco where you do have a lot of like robberies right now and like vandalism, right? And you also have a lot of homeless problem, right? These are two different things, though.
Yeah.
Like the people who are doing all the vandalism and going into the malls or grocery stores and picking up things is not necessarily the
Right.
homeless people. Like these are
Right.
two different groups of people. Yeah.
Right.
Anyways, I mean, yeah, people, the addicts are. Yeah. Anyways, I don't know. Get into this.
Mm.
So we have Ibn Qayyim and Gaging American waiting to come up. So let's go with Ibn Qayyim first because he came first. Hi.
Hi there, guys. You all right? How you doing?
Hey,
Good.
How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. It's 4:38 here in the UK, but it's beautiful. Not yet, but it should come up within the next few hours. Yeah, it's a really interesting topic that's got me thinking. You know, this issue about homelessness, unemployment, poverty, etc. Do you think the question I have is, do you think the government has a responsibility in creating public sector jobs to alleviate or lower the unemployment rate? What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, not necessarily on that. I would say the government has the general responsibility to be, taking care and paying attention to the well-being of its citizens, right? But I don't know. I don't think they have a requirement to increase the size of bureaucracy simply to provide jobs for people.
I think that's a terrible idea. I think that will basically make your government extremely inefficient. Just to add jobs just for the sake of adding
for the
jobs
sake of it, right?
Is the recipe for horrible inefficiency. I think if you want to, I think the government could, like, I'm in favor of a universal basic income. I know it has its problems, but I'm in favor of it. And if the government wants to create jobs, I think there's tax policies that it could do, make that, and also education. Okay, making education and getting skills for easy for its population. I think that's how the government could be involved. But creating needless jobs is not the way.
In the UK, this happens, right? So for example, if you ever work in the public sector in the UK, you'll find it's completely different to working in the private sector, in that the amount of work you have to do is very, very minimal in most public sector jobs compared to working in the private sector. So I see this kind of happening to an extent in the UK, where the government creates public sector jobs, decently paying public sector jobs, so jobs which pay maybe £29,000 a year, which is close to the average salary in the UK. And a lot of these jobs, you do very, very minimal work. I mean, when I first came out of university, I got a public sector job paying about £28,000 a year. And I was doing literally 1.5 hours of work a day, and I would be working 37 hours a week. Yeah, and I would be paid for 37 hours a week, and I could literally do that work within one day. And you'd be surprised.
I mean, good for you, but
in Western Europe, in Western Europe, but yeah. So it is inefficient, but I think I don't know. It does.
Imagine if all the money that was going through all those people, right, was saved and spent more on lifting people up to do actually things that is needed in the economy.
Yeah. I think Lilypad's comment about infrastructure, I think that's huge. That is one thing. That and then what Armin was saying about investing in education and science research and stuff. It is just every single freaking time you put money into infrastructure for a country, it just comes back to you. It just does. We have seen this time and time again. And so fixing your roads, fixing your bridges, fixing your water pipes, and educating the next group of citizens, those are always
and scientific and government sponsored scientific research seems to always pays back.
Absolutely. 100%. I mean,
so why are these things that have been proven to return much, give us 10 times more back in return on investment? Like, why, when you have other things that the government is spending money on, which seems to be waste, why not cut those and just invest in these things? And when you invest in these things, you are actually producing jobs that are actually needed. Like infrastructure, when the government spends on infrastructure, okay, it's actually paying people, like it's creating jobs, but but it's creating jobs that are actually going towards something. Like they're doing something that is helping. It's not just jobs for the sake of jobs.
Even for example, when they would invest in infrastructure, the amount of pressure on the people that would be working in those jobs would be very, very minimal. So even if creating infrastructure, it'll be very inefficient if it's done by the government, because
that's why there's a model called private public partnership. Okay, so when the government does infrastructure on its own, it does it very inefficiently unless it's in war. Okay, when for some reason governments get very efficient
some reason
when they're fighting somebody else, they're all of a sudden going from being the least efficient entities to the most efficient.
It's weird how that flips.
It flips, right? But I think when the government does infrastructure, doing that in partnership with the private sector and having shareholders that need to lower costs and increase profits involved with the project creates that efficiency. So you get the best of both worlds, right? You get the efficiency of the private sector plus the taxpayer funded boost that you need for the infrastructure.
Because one thing about just real quick about private sector, like especially when you think of like the United States, so one of the things that's really a good model to look at is the railroad. So the Transcontinental Railroad, how that actually got built across the United States, the majority of that was private sector, right? The problem is that while those rail lines were extremely efficient in being set up, they were not beneficial to anybody but the company. And so you would take this 400-mile journey on a train that would take you weeks, and you'd get out in the middle of nowhere and you would be at a mine and there would be nothing else. And it's like, well, there's a town, 10 miles that way. It's like, well, how the hell do I get there? And it's like, well, you can start walking or you can start digging. And so like, yeah, you want to have that partnership because the private sector will give you more efficiency, and in general more quality, right? You're because of that competition, but you're going to have the general benefit that is actually spread out more with the public sector. So
yeah, I don't necessarily disagree with you guys, but in terms of a moral position, I might not be 100% with you on this, but one thing I have to say is the public sector unions are very strong. And even though the Conservative Party has tried to create public and private,
what's morally wrong with what you're saying?
I don't think it's wrong for government. If, for example, if the government didn't create these jobs, potentially we could have higher unemployment rate, a higher unemployment rate.
But what we're saying also produces jobs.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, I see what you mean.
There's two options. We're looking at two options, right? Creating jobs that are inefficient, and government producing jobs that are efficient and are actually doing something. So that's the difference. But both are producing jobs.
No, I agree, but it might not produce as many jobs, or those jobs that they produce are higher paying jobs, rather than the jobs that the government are creating, which might be lower paying jobs, but may create more jobs overall, if you know what I mean.
No.
So the private sector might have lower, because it's more efficient. It might create less higher paying jobs, whereas the government can produce more slightly lower paying jobs.
It will make more jobs for more people. No. Here's the thing: if you have less waste, okay, more wealth is going to get to more people on average. So more waste means at the end of the day, less wealth to less people. Okay, less waste will mean more wealth to more people.
Yeah, I see, and I know you're more knowledgeable than me with regard to economics and whatnot, but I do understand where you're coming from with regard to this. But in the UK, the public sector unions are very, very strong, and most of them are completely against these public-private cooperative partnerships.
Like, for example, are comfortable with the job, like they care about them. They don't care about the effect on society at large. They care about their own. We're looking at it at what's beneficial to the whole society. They're looking at it what's beneficial to our members.
And I think there's an argument to be said that a government, by partnering with the private sector, could bolster and increase that private sector to a level where there is a requirement for meaningful and efficient government jobs to help regulate that sector, right? So as the automotive industry gets bigger, right? Well, now we do need some common sense, regulation. We do need to start posting up speed limit signs. Well, now we have to have people that are enforcing that more. Now we have to have people that are checking these factories to make sure that they're following the standards for, actually being, beneficial to people and not harmful, right? So I think there's an argument for that too, that by the government partnering with private sector, you can increase that industry to a level where now the government can create more jobs, but meaningful ones, and ones that actually are efficient as opposed to just wasteful.
I completely agree. And an example of this is the London Underground tube drivers. So this is not a very difficult job, right? You know what the average salary is for a London Underground tube driver? £100,000 a year they get because of the union is so strong. The average salary is 100,000 a year.
Are they hiring?
And they literally, it's not easy to get a job. You have to be within the London Underground tube system.
Come on,
working
But
there
that's
for a few years.
see, this is not an idea. This is not ideal. You want these jobs to be. How are you going to lift people up if you're like, oh, you need to be on the special elite club to be able to have access to this, and if you're not, if you don't have access, you're screwed. Like, is this a model we want to go with? Like, okay, if the stars have aligned for you to be lucky enough to have this membership into this cult, now everything is provided for you, and you don't even have to try hard. But if you don't have that membership, then sorry, you're screwed. Like, this is not the way to do things.
I do like the thought that the operators for the London Underground are like in a cult. I do like that thought, and they all like gather together, and they're like operators of the underground tube.
You show up, you press a button, and here's $100,000.
Yeah. No,
all right.
That's all I wanted to ask. But no, thank you guys very much. There is something I would recommend you guys watch if you get the chance. It's a program called a YouTube channel called Light and Dark. It's basically, it goes to drug addicts and interviews them in the UK. And there's a really special interview called with a guy called Aziz. He's of Bengali origin, and he was a law graduate. And he went to for his graduation, his friends took him to like a trap house, and he injected heroin for the first time, and he became addicted for the rest of his life. He's 44 years old. He's on the streets. He's almost at death's door. And this is a law graduate. He had his whole future ahead of him, and he took one syringe to his arm, and he lost everything. But yeah, definitely worth watching. I'll send you a link to that, Armin. It's really worth a watch. Really interesting.
Okay.
Speaking to him. All right. But no, thank you very much, guys.
Thank you so much. Thank you. That was interesting.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye.
All right. Hi.
Hi.
Hey.
So I just wanted to correct Secular Rarity real quick. The Americans built, well, I say we Americans built the Underground Rail, not the Underground Railroads. Well, we built that too, technically. We built the railroads with cheap immigrant coolie Chinese labor and Irish labor because no one dared to touch nitroglycerin in its pure form. This was before the invention of dynamite, where it was stabilized. Okay, so
that is, I appreciate that correction. That is 100% correct. It is, yes, there is a shit ton of documents that indicate how terrible we were to both Chinese, Asian immigrants. It was a very bad time. Yes,
and we're doing it now with private prisons. So when we talk about efficiency, we have to like remember the human aspect of this and remember who it's all for. But my main question was, what are your thoughts on the vocabulary around unhoused versus homeless? And like some people would say that, oh, homeless is such an abstract term. What is a home? Whereas unhoused directly gets to the point. People who don't have houses.
I think that goes into the vein, because I used both terms interchangeably myself. I think that goes into a lot of the discussion that we're having about how to make language more inclusive or less derogatory towards various people, right? So many years ago, I personally won't even say the word because I'm not a fan of it. but there's a word that starts with R that was used in the past that was a medical terminology for individuals with mental impairments, right? We are now in a place where there is a huge amount of people where reasonably, in my opinion, I think this is completely reasonable, that they say, hey, that's really not a word that we should use. It's really more of an offensive term than it is anything used in medicine. It's not a great way to respond to people. We just shouldn't use that term. And I think that's a reasonable discussion to have. Where do I personally fall on unhoused versus homeless? To me, they seem almost interchangeable at this point in time. And if somebody, especially somebody that is like an activist that has worked in this space for 10 years, like for instance, if there was somebody that had worked with, drug addiction and they say, hey, we shouldn't use the term addict. We should use this term instead, right? I am more than willing to listen to those arguments and change my vocabulary when presented with good arguments. But this is what happens with language, right? We do that all the time, and we change around the meaning of words. And so I'm not opposed to that in general, but I don't think we should necessarily be canceling people because they're using homeless instead of unhoused.
Gotcha. Yeah, I remember watching a George Carlin special, and that's when the term first came to my head. And but that was like years ago, back when I was in middle school. So this is just more of to piggyback off of what you guys were talking about when it comes to private sector and public sector. That's a huge thing China's dealing with, since 改革开放, when they legalized capitalism. How do they mix public cooperatives with private ownership? But the short of answer is it's always about who you know. And a lot of people get just huge government contracts because sometimes it is I can't give a blanket statement to over the however many counties China has, but a lot of them are because there's extra bureaucratic jobs that aren't necessary because my uncle's niece's younger sister needs it or something. So
and I would say when Armin and I were discussing, and I mean, correct me if I'm wrong on this, Armin, but when Armin and I were discussing that kind of private-public partnership, we're assuming that there's no corruption, right? We're assuming that it's working in a system where people are actually going about and picking contracts for, private industries that are actually, viable and efficient, as opposed to just saying, this is my buddy. Because in that system, I would say, that's bad, and that's always going to lead to bad stuff.
Yeah, I heard in Brazil there was this huge scandal where this monopoly, instead of competing for contracts, they just took turns on who gets to have the government contract. It's just that
might have been the car wash Operation Car Wash. That was what they called it, I think, but it was a big scandal with Petrobras, maybe the oil company, and that was interesting.
Yeah, it's important for the government not to play favoritism when they are doing programs like this. They actually open the door for this contract to be competed again. So when you want to do PPP as private public partnership, you put the contract out there, and then different companies come and make offers, and they compete with each other. And if there should be severe laws for any government agency that picks favors instead of actually saying who provides the best service.
Okay, one last question about what do you guys think about crowdfunding and its potential to either disrupt or replace segments of the investment market?
Wait, investment in the market? How?
Instead of doing private investment through private equity firms or what have you, we crowdfund. This sounds really out of the box, but crowdfund missions to space or crowdfund.
I mean, that's just another version of the stock market.
Okay.
My
question was how would it bite into the niche that the stock market currently plays? Would it be a more efficient version of the stock market?
I don't. I mean, the stock market has is very efficient, so I don't think so. But it's just like I mean, at the end of the day, if you do that, you're technically providing. I don't know. I'm not a legal expert, but you could kind of like a Kickstarter. You're looking at a Kickstarter versus like buying stocks in a company, right? I mean, technically, doing crowdfunding is what we do already, right? Like before a company goes public on the stock market, how did it all start?
Is. Yeah,
that's what an IPO is. That's crowdfunding a project, right? And even or before that, like before they did an IPO, how did they get started? They were like they had angel investors, all right, before. So that was they had crowdfunded the company, and then they went to VC, and then from VC they went to an IPO, and now they're like it's just a continuum of the same thing. It's just like getting people's money to projects. Crowdfunding is how it starts.
I think it has the potential to open up more avenues and potentially more industries than what would be opened up specifically and exclusively through the stock market, right? But when it comes to some of those very large things, like one of the things you brought up as an example was like missions to space, right? Like rockets to Mars or something. That may not be something that is actually feasible under that crowdsource model. That may be such a large project that requires so many different industries working together in such a specific way that crowdfunding such a program or mission would not be feasible, right? But I think the crowdfunding aspect is going to allow for some of those more niche and smaller industries to advance and flourish in a way that would not be the case strictly on the stock market, free market kind of model, because they just don't really care about that. That's why capitalism needs regulation, is because there are certain aspects that the market just doesn't care about.
I think the thing is, angel investing is crowdfunding, but now because of the internet, now we have just crowdfunding accessible to more people with lower capital.
But angel investors are normally asking for a percentage of your company, right? Not oftentimes does somebody come up and just say, crowdfunding is not necessarily giving any percentage of your company whatsoever.
They want something.
Not necessarily though.
Like names.
But perks is like
a t-shirt. You can get a t-shirt, and that does it for people, man. And
you're not gonna fly rockets into
space. That's why
promising people t-shirts. You need
that's
to
why I said that.
You're not gonna be able to raise enough capital with promising t-shirts
from Mars.
That's why I said that. Is that under that model? Yeah, right. You get the first rock from Mars, right? If you donate $5 to this.
You could try. You're not going to raise enough capital to be able to fund that.
That's what I'm saying. There's like let's say, for instance, a local cake shop, right? A local bakery, right? In this small town, okay, that now has 5 jobs, right? Okay, yeah, that probably isn't something through the normal stock market kind of means we would see flourishing. Through crowdfunding, we can see that. But when it comes to those big things like building a new stadium for a soccer team or missions to Mars, that's probably not.
All right, guys, we're over time. We need PK is waiting, and we're over time.
Okay. All right. Well, my scenario was if more people had more access to capital, like if there were less trillionaires and more.
But they need to get something back in return.
No, I meant like in my world, not my world. In my scenario, it would be like more people would have more access to capital as opposed to a handful of billionaires.
That's why I think we could see some more niche industries flourish.
You could go through an IPO then. We have that model already.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. All right. All right. Bye. All right. PK. Hi.
Hi. Sorry.
Hey.
My question is so regarding the homelessness thing.
Yes.
So I was discussing this with one of my friends, and the doubt I have is whenever everyone talks about homelessness, they always talk about the most like the people who are drug addicts and they're not able to work at all, and you see, and that is the most visible aspect of the homelessness crisis. But is that the majority of the homeless people, or is it those are actually the most visible ones, but there are actually a lot more homeless people who are doing normal minimum wage jobs, but they just don't have a proper house? And are they also in the category of homelessness? Because I think a lot of the focus is on the drug addicts rather than bigger majority of people who are homeless.
Yeah, and this was kind of something that Armin was talking about before when we were talking about kind of a minimum standard of living, is that once you go below a certain threshold, a lot of times it is essentially impossible to ever get out of that. And one of the things in the United States is we actually in most cities and states we criminalize homelessness. And so what happens is now we have somebody who is working a job and gets laid off, let's say, for no fault of their own, right? Or are working a job and are just not making enough money to actually provide for the basic necessities for themselves. Then they're homeless. Then they get a criminal record. Now they're incapable of being hired again, and the system just keeps going. And so, yeah, there is a lot of that. There are a lot of people that, again, specifically in the U.S., there are a lot of people that were perfectly wonderful, productive members of society, everything, that checks all the boxes, but then they got a parking ticket and they were incapable of paying the parking ticket. And then that stacked up to extra criminal charges. And now they're in jail for 2 years. And when they get out of jail, their apartment's gone, their job is gone, their friends and family are gone, and now they're screwed. So yes, I mean, that is definitely a big subsection of these individuals. And I again, that's specifically US focused. I would probably put money that you would see that everywhere. I just don't think that's going to be much different.
So I think for those kind of homelessness issues, I think I see in US much bigger issue is the zoning laws. I mean, you are forced to be in a big house. If I'm not able to earn that much money, I should have lots of options of just living in a small apartment and not having to pay for a big house. And I see like a lot of places is just single family zoning, and you're just kind of forced into that kind of lifestyle where you need to own a car, you need to live in a type of a house, and it becomes unviable for a lot of people who are working minimum wage. So I think a lot of that's my kind of thing. Like, it's just not adding like giving homeless people houses, but also like we need to the US needs to change their zoning laws, and allow poor people to live in small apartments.
And we also have in the United States, another big problem that's going on is that we have these very large, multi-million-dollar
big mansions.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of the term, not architect firms, but real estate and that whole industry of building houses and owning land and selling houses and stuff. It's a very, very built up industry. And what a lot of those companies are doing is they're going out to places and they're just buying these massive swaths of land where people can live. And then they're parceling them all out and selling them at exorbitant prices and stuff. So they're buying people out because they have the money and they can just come in. And this is what gentrification is, right? Is a big corporation comes into an area that has been run down because there were a lot of minority individuals. The city didn't put a lot of money into it. They come in, they buy this whole freaking property, they kick everybody out, they refurbish it, and they sell it for shit tons. So yeah, that's also a problem with it too. It's a multifactorial problem for sure that needs to be addressed from different angles to actually ameliorate it entirely. I just figured we should pull that word.
Oh my god. Fix it. We're gonna fix it. All right, guys. We're like way over time, so we should end this here.
Yeah, thanks a lot. That's about it.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay. That was good. Thank you so much, Vicky. Bye. Yeah. All right, guys. Make sure you like the video before you leave. Make sure you like and subscribe. Make sure you check out Atheist Republic newsletter. Subscribe to it for our weekly blasphemous, sexy art. We have some really new art that just came out this week, but make sure you don't miss any of them by being subscribed to them. They're very sexy, very juicy, so subscribe to that. Also, if you want to support us financially, consider becoming a YouTube member. Consider becoming a patron on Patreon. We also have our PayPal link in the description. But again, reminder, do not support us financially if you are struggling financially. Even if you're struggling a little bit, do not support us. Just like and subscribe and leave a comment. That's already a lot of support for us. Anything else you want to
add? News this Sunday.
News this Sunday. Yes.
Make sure to be here.
Yes, make sure you're subscribed for the news. All right, guys. Bye. Mwah.